like to call this hearing, joint committee hearing of Water and Land and the Committee on Housing to order. We have an agenda that includes in the first bill we have in the first measure joint hearing with Water, Land and Housing. We'll make decision on that bill after we hear the testimony, and then Housing Committee will move on committee hearing of Water and Land and the Committee on Housing to order. We have an agenda that includes in the first bill. The first bill, after we hear testimony, we'll have decision making of the joint committee. Then we will recess. The Housing Committee will leave, and the Water Land Committee will continue with the rest of the measures on our agenda. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Because morning hearings must adjourn prior to the noon floor session, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your written testimony will be considered by the committee. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. Thank you very much, testifiers, for being here today. And I apologize for getting started late. We had a hearing before this that took longer than we had expected. Let's move on to the first measure, House Bill 58, relating to state funds. We have received testimony from the Department of Budget and Finance providing comments. We have received testimony from HHFDC in support. Denise Matsubara, are you there? You can provide testimony. The floor is yours. Not there. Thank you. We have testimony from her in support. Next testimony from David Penn with DLNR providing comments. Mr. Penn, are you available? If so, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm available. Thank you, Chair Tarnas. Trying to turn on the video. Okay, David Penn, Program Specialist for Legacy Land Conservation with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. I'm not sure if our Division Administrator, David Smith, is also in the hearing, but the department stands on the written testimony and we're available for any questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony also from DLNR, Mr. David Smith. Did you want to provide any written test or provide any oral testimony?
No, thank you. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committees. David Smith, Administrator, Division of Forest and Wildlife. We'll stand on our written testimony. If there's any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you very much. And final testifier, Tom Yamachika with the Tax Foundation of Hawaii providing comments. Mr. Yamachika, his testimony is available for everyone to read. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to you, Chair Nakamura. Do your members have questions of the testifiers?
Any questions, members? No questions on our side.
Thank you. Then I would like to recess this for decision making. And if we're going to reconvene for decision making on this one bill, House Bill 58. And the recommendation I would like to make is to pass out a House Draft 1, which would only defect the effective date. Recognizing the introducer will be able to make the changes necessary in the next committee. I think the DLNR's request can be considered at that time. So HD1, defect the effective date. Discussion, members. If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 58 with amendments. The chair and vice chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, the measure passes.
Thank you. Chair Nakamura, please have your committee take the vote.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Recommendation of the chair to pass HB 58, noting the chair and vice chair vote aye. Representative Aquino is excused. Representative Decoit is excused. Representative Iligan. Aye. Representative Kigawa. Representative Takumi. Aye. Representative McDermott is excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
We'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I will recess and thank the Housing Committee for your efforts today.
Thank you very much.
Aloha.
Aloha.
To continue our hearing as we have on our agenda. Next measure we're going to consider is House Bill 1014, relating to authorizing the Department of Land and Natural Resources to lease pasture lands on terms that promote collaborative beneficial use for forestry, wildlife, recreational, and food production purposes. First, we have testimony from DLNR. I understand Irene Sprecher is available to provide oral testimony. Ms. Sprecher, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chairs and members of the committee. Irene Sprecher, I'm the Forestry Program Manager with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We are in strong support of this administrative measure and believe that it will provide some additional legislative tools and flexibility in supporting the land stewards of some of our lands, and not only allow us to better manage our natural and cultural resources, but also support agricultural production. We'll stand on our testimony from there, and we have a number of our staff members present if there's any questions about our testimony or otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have Mr. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau, with testimony providing comments. Mr. Miyamoto, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony offering comments. We do prefer the language in the next bill, HB 469, but as far as this bill is concerned, we are in agreement with the concerns expressed in the testimony of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, and we do respectfully suggest that if this bill moves forward, that their amendments are adopted. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser. Chair Geyser, Shimabukuro Geyser, the floor is yours.
Chair Tanis, this is Morris Ata, the Department of Agriculture. The department will stand on its written testimony offering comments and just wants to reiterate that the department continues to support the ranching and cattle industry and are ready to provide whatever assistance it needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ata. Next, we have testimony from the Ulupono Initiative providing comments. And then we have testimony from the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, Ms. Nicole Galassi. Ms. Galassi, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Branco, and members of the committee, I'm Nicole Galassi, testifying on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, providing comments. The cattlemen are looking for a way forward. We truly support Act 90-2003 and respect that the legislature found that transferring the non-ag parklands to DOA would ensure the long-term productive use of public agricultural lands. We prefer HB 469 to resolve this issue, but understanding that the DLNR wants to keep certain parcels rather than transferring them to the DOA, we respectfully ask that the language be added to ensure that the leasees have some protections against land being taken out of active agriculture unless they get enough notice to properly prepare for the land use change and a plan and funding is in place. This language would indeed move the bill closer to its intent of promoting collaborative beneficial use for forestry and wildlife, recreation, and food production. We hope that it is clear also that this bill does not negate Act 90, 2003, but that its implementation should still be pursued. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. We have testimony, written testimony in support from Lonnie Petrie from Kapapala Ranch, testimony providing comments. We have testimony in support from Moana Bjur with the Conservation Council for Hawaii, testimony in support from Wendy Miles, and testimony providing comments from Jay Ashman. That's all the testimony we have on this measure. Members, any questions of the testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 469, relating to the transfer of non-agricultural park lands. For this measure, we have testimony in support from Alan Yoshida, Hawaii Farm Bureau, testimony in support from Maui County Farm Bureau, Warren Watanabe, testimony in opposition from Suzanne Case from DLNR. DLNR representative, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Russell Tsuchi for the department. We will stand on our opposition, strongly opposing this bill that mandates the transfer of ag lands to the extent that other, over the consideration of other public trust priorities. We have a number of our department staff here on board to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I note in your testimony that you say if you do want to pass it, you've got suggested amendments.
Yes, we propose some amendments, yes.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony in support from Hawaii Farm Bureau, Brian Miyamoto. Mr. Miyamoto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, and I figured out how to make my camera work. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in strong support of this measure. Our farmers and the ranchers, especially our ranchers, have been waiting over 18 years, about 18 years for the full implementation of Act 90. We are in very strong support, and we appreciate you hearing this bill, and we appreciate your consideration of passing HB 469. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have the head of the Department of Agriculture, Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, providing comments. The floor is yours, or Morisata, if you're providing testimony as well.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas and Chair Nakua. Yes, the department will stand on its written testimony offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Jody Malinowski of Sierra Club of Hawaii, testimony in support from Larry Geller, Green Wheel Food Hub, testimony in support from Ronald Weidenbach, Hawaii Aquaculture and Aquaponics Association, testimony in support from Bobby Farias, Hawaii Meats, testimony in support from Ulupono Initiative, Micah Munakata, testimony in support from William Jacinto, Maui Cattlemen's Association, testimony in support from Emmanuel Zibakalam from Hawaii Crop Improvement Association. Mr. Zibakalam, you have the floor. Go ahead. He's not here. You can take a look at the testimony. Members. Next, we have Hawaii Cattlemen's Council providing testimony in support. Ms. Galase, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. The Hawaii Cattlemen's Council strongly supports HB 469 to set a deadline for Act 90, 2003. Ranchers have been waiting too long while this issue goes unresolved. These ranchers are good tenants. Over the years, they've individually put in hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments into water systems, fencing, invasive species removal. When the COVID pandemic caused families to lose jobs, these ranchers donated over 25,000 pounds of beef, and that's a conservative estimate. The Salvation Army was able to use that to cook over 60,000 hot meals for families in need. I say this because ranchers have the ability to steward the land and stand up for the community. DLNR already has so much land to manage, and we hope they see the benefit of transferring these lands so that the leaseholders can get the proper agricultural lease terms and management that they need to continue to do this work. We support this bill because it puts a deadline on transferring to DLNR, but still gives DLNR the opportunity to advocate for the lands they believe serve their mission. We have concern that this bill will allow DLNR to put an easement on any lands prior to DOA offering a lease, and respectfully request that this is specified to allow for any easements specifically for DLNR access to landlocked lands or forest reservoirs or DLNR assets. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill, Chair Tarnas.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Keith Unger, McCandless Ranch. Testimony and support from Larry Jeffs Farm. Testimony and support from Lonnie Petrie, Capapala Ranch. Ms. Petrie, the floor is yours. Please proceed. Go ahead.
I'm trying to, it's not letting me in, but can you hear my voice?
Yes, we hear you and see you. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. We strongly support HB 469. Ranches require long-term land tenure to allow for long-term land decisions. Defining the boundaries of what should be in conservation and what should be in agriculture, so create the stability we require to plan and execute sound management practices. Public purpose is a broad generalization. Producing food serves the public purpose, and providing recreational areas serves the public purpose. But trying to manage the two together is only easy to those that don't have to do anything but talk about it. We manage 3 public accesses 365 days a year, and we manage public bird hunting, which is open from the 1st of November through the end of January, 13 consecutive weekends. We need clear definition of which lands we can operate to produce food and be a priority. Those lands would be best managed by the Department of Agriculture pursuant to Act 90. Thank you for an opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Petrie. Appreciate it very much. Next, we have testimony and support from John Garibaldi, Local Food Coalition. Testimony and support from Sarah Moore, Kealia Ranch. Testimony and support from Christy Kajiwara Guzman, Hawaii Youth Livestock Association. We have testimony from about 30 individuals in support. I'm not going to read all their names if that's okay with you members, but tell all the folks who are giving testimony we do have them. We also have testimony in opposition from, there's shorter lists, I'll read them. Randall Kennedy, Wendy Miles are the 2 in opposition, but we have 30 members. Okay, I'll read them quickly. Woody Child, but these are all in support. Woody Child, Bud and Katie Gibson, Taylor Kellerman, Peter Simmons, Frederick Mencher, Kristen, Eileen Ye, Kyle Cares, Janae O'Donnell, Vanessa Stevens, Chloe Stevens, Charles Stevens, Jimmy Gomes, Michelle Gorham, Dee Dee Bertelman, Whitney Botello, Eileen Ye, Wayne Botello, Jay Ashman, Iris Botello, Stephanie Whalen, James Kimo Falconer, Brandon Balthazar, Christy Guzman, and James Tavares. We also have testimony from Jerry Moniz in support. Ms. Moniz, if you're on, please, the floor is yours. Nope. Okay, so just members, please refer to testimony from Jerry Moniz. That's all the testifiers we have on this measure. That's quite a few testimony. Thank you very much, testifiers, for being engaged in the political and legislative process. Members, any questions of our testifiers? Nope. Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate the testifiers. This is an important issue, and your testimony you provided in writing is in front of all of the members here. We can consider it in decision making. Okay, let's go on to the next measure. House Bill 1144 relating to agriculture. First up, we have testimony from Isaac Choi, Department of Taxation. Mr. Choi, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. Josh Michaels on behalf of the Director of Tax. We'll stand on our testimony offering comments.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony providing comments from Dean Nishina, DCCA, Division of Consumer Advocacy. The floor is yours, Mr. Nishina.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. You have a written testimony offering comments, and we stand on that. But I'd like to offer also, as a result of Senate Resolution 125 from last session, the Public Utilities Commission has stood up a working group looking at issues related to the water carriers, and there is a subgroup that's looking at the various subsidies and how best to fund those subsidies. I'm sorry, my microphone was up. Sorry, I was mentioning Senate Resolution 125 from last session that the Public Utilities Commission has stood up, and then various stakeholders are working on a number of issues related to water carriers, including subsidies such as those for agriculture. With that, I appreciate the opportunity and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nishina. Next, we have testimony providing comments from Jay Griffin with the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission. Jay, if you're available, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Parsons. I'm testifying on behalf of Jay Griffin, Chair of the PUC. You have our written testimony, and I just wanted to summarize 2 points. The Commission supports the intent to support the farm and ranch operators on the neighbor islands. And as Mr. Nishina mentioned, the Commission has stood up this Hawaii Water Carriers Working Group to develop mid and long-term solutions to enable provision of sustainable inter-island water carrier service. And the working group will submit a final report of its findings and its recommendations, including any proposed legislation prior to convening the 2022 legislative session pursuant to Senate Resolution 125. And just the last point is just if this measure moves forward, the Commission respectfully recommends that an amendment that would allow the Commission to implement the rates either through adoption of rules or by Commission order. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to testify and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Next, we have testimony in support from Brian Miyamoto with the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Mr. Miyamoto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco Brian Miyamoto again on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We are in strong support of this measure. Inter-island transportation is a major issue with neighbor island farmers and ranchers. Our population centers are here on Oahu, but a lot of them, majority of our lands are on the neighbor islands, and they're at a distinct disadvantage as far as having that extra cost of transportation. Even could go 2 ways, or doubling their transportation. Inputs come to Honolulu, it needs to be shipped out to the neighbor islands. They produce it on the neighbor islands, and if they want to sell it here on our population base on Oahu, they got to send it back. So it really does put them at a disadvantage. So we do appreciate any effort to help lower the cost of production, especially for neighbor island farmers and ranchers. So we appreciate you hearing this measure, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Miyamoto. And next we have testimony providing comments from Hawaii Department of Agriculture, testimony in support from the Maui County Farm Bureau, testimony providing comments from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. Mr. Yamachika has provided those for us. We have testimony in support from Ulupono Initiative, testimony providing comments from Young Brothers. Is there a representative from the Young Brothers wishing to provide testimony? If so, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, Chair Tarnas, Chair Nakamura, and members of the committee. My name is Chris Nakagawa, appearing on behalf of Young Brothers. We'll stand on our written testimony and we're available for any questions if necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. That's all the testimony we have, members. Are there any questions for our testifiers? Nope. Seeing none, thank you. I appreciate our members who study the testimony so they know what to do. Okay, let's move on to House Bill 320 relating to historic preservation. We have testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in support. Testimony from DLNR, Dr. Alan Downer in support. Dr. Downer, if you're available, please provide your testimony. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Alan Downer. I'm the administrator of the State Historic Preservation Division. And, the department stands on its written testimony and support, and obviously be happy to answer any questions if the committee has any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Downer. Next, we have testimony in support from Kirsten Faulkner, Historic Hawaii Foundation, testimony in support from Tricia Kehaulani Watson from Honua Consulting, testimony providing comments from Hallett Hammett, Cultural Surveys Hawaii, and testimony in support from Vanessa Lee Miller. That's all the testimony we have, members. Any of you have questions for Dr. Downer? Seeing none, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next measure, House Bill 821, relating to historic preservation. we have testimony in support from Dr. Downer at DLNR. Dr. Downer, the floor is yours.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Alan Downer. I'm the administrator of the State Historic Preservation Division, and the department stands on its testimony and support. I'll be happy to provide any answers if there are questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony in support from Sandy Wong with Dowling Company. Sandy Wong, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas. This is Sandy Wong on behalf of Dowling Company. Dowling Company supports this measure. We have submitted written testimony, and in our written testimony, we have offered a friendly amendment. We think our amendment will add to the bill to ease the backlog on the backlog issue. So thank you. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. We have next testimony providing comments from Kirsten Faulkner with Historic Hawaii Foundation. Testimony in opposition from HGEA. Testimony providing comments from the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and testimony in support from Everett Dowling. Mr. Dowling, if you're available, please proceed. No, okay. So Ms. Wong provided testimony on behalf of Dowling Company. So if we have any questions, we can ask her. Okay, that's all the testimony we have, members. Any questions for our testifiers? Yes, Representative Morikawa, please proceed.
For, I guess the department, is it Alan?
Dr. Downer, yes.
Do you have vacancies in that section?
Can you unmute yourself, please?
My apologies. Yes, we do have vacancies. We have 3 positions that were zero funded in last year's budget. So the positions exist, but there's no money. We have a couple other positions that are vacant, but due to the hiring freeze, we can't begin recruitment.
So where is the funding coming to contract out the service?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
Okay, if you are outsourcing the service, where is that funding coming from?
That's a very good question. You know, it is not in SHPT's budget at this moment. I don't know the answer to that question. We don't have funds for it right now. You know, and if it is to be implemented, it will require funding. You know, for third-party review, for example, we would expect that to be paid by the developer, the project proponent, rather than coming from state funds. But you know, if the legislature wishes SHPT to pay that, there will have to be an appropriation for it.
Okay, thank you for that. But will you be pursuing restoring these positions in the future?
Yeah, the governor's budget at this point the governor's proposed budget includes funding for all of those positions. So if the legislature adopts the governor's proposal with respect to SHPT, all of those positions are funded. And as soon as we have the opportunity, we will initiate recruitment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downer.
Thank you, Representative Morikawa. Other questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 1348, relating to the Stadium Development District. We have a number of testifiers on this measure. First, Deepak Nuapane from HCDA providing comments. Mr. Nuapane, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. HCDA stands on its written comments. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony in support from the Department of Accounting and General Services. Representative from DAGS, please proceed. The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kurt Otoguro. I'm the comptroller for the state and director of Department of Accounting and General Services. DAGS stands on its testimony in support of HB 1348 to develop the Stadium District. As you know, this is a project that has been longstanding and has been in engaging the community, surrounding communities for many years. And the state has been evaluating the best use of the 98 acres at Halava for quite some time and have come to the conclusion that development of an entertainment district, in addition to the replacement of an aging Aloha Stadium, is in the best interest for the state as well as to benefit the community surrounding that. We believe that the new entertainment district will create a new experience for both local residents as well as tourists to enjoy viewing different entertainment venues or different entertainment events over and above athletics. Athletics being something that's very near and dear to our hearts in Hawaii, namely University of Hawaii and the football program. But what we've experienced over the years is a growing demand for other types of entertainment, whether it's in concerts, whether it's in other events. And so we believe that monetizing the 98 acres over the next several decades will provide the state with a solid source of revenue to monetize the land. We're happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Otaguro. Appreciate it. We also have with us Mr. Scott Chan from the DAGS. He's a stadium manager. Mr. Chan, would you like to provide any oral testimony? Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Scott Chan. I represent the Stadium Authority. We stand on our testimony in strong support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, we have testimony in support from the University of Hawaii, Calbert Young. Mr. Young, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Committee has testimony from the University of Hawaii. We can stand on our testimony in support. We are requesting a small revision in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Next, we have testimony providing comments from Craig Hirai, Department of Budget and Finance. Testimony in support from Christine Kinimaka from DAGS. Ms. Kinimaka, would you like to provide testimony? If so, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm here also with the Comptroller in support of the measure, and I am from the Department of Accounting and General Services, here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate having the whole team here. Next, we have testimony providing comments from the League of Women Voters, testimony in support from the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, testimony in support from the Hawaii Laborers and Employers Cooperation and Education Trust Fund, testimony in support from Pacific Resource Partnership, testimony in support from Operating Engineers Stabilization Fund, testimony in support from Hawaii Construction Alliance, testimony in support from Local 630, testimony in support from Mr. Kobayashi with Local 368, testimony in support from Mike Goliach Sr., and testimony in support from Arnold Wong. That's all the testimony that we have before us, members. Do you have any questions for our testifiers? Representative Kobayashi, please proceed.
For Stadium Authority, the first page of the bill talks about responsibilities of the Stadium Authority, and it only includes the words maintain, operate, and manage. I'm a little concerned that it doesn't talk about construction or improvements, etc.
Your question?
No, that's my question. One part of the bill on page 1 differs somewhat from page 8, where the Stadium Authority powers and duties are iterated, but it seems that the two are not in sync.
Would the Stadium Authority like to provide any comments on that? Mr. Chan, go ahead.
I'm not sure if we can have comptroller or the PWA, Chris Kinimaka, address that. I do know that we are part of the process in our capacity, and we are currently involved with adding comments to the bill. I would seek.
It may simply be a technical legal drafting concern as to how inclusive the language should be on page 1. Thank you.
Good eye. I appreciate that, Representative Kobayashi. Make sure that we have this written properly. Other questions, members, for any of the testifiers? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will move on to the next measure. House Bill 823, relating to public land liability. We have testimony in support from Karen Inagaki, Deputy Attorney General. Testimony in support from Kurt Cottrell, DLNR. Mr. Cottrell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Representative Tarnas. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator for the Division of State Parks. And the department stands in very robust support of this measure. It's a cleanup measure that we believe has become very pertinent over the ensuing years. As the testimony states, we pretty much have it down in terms of the process and protocols and designs for both the beach and mouth of warning signs. So we're trying to streamline our ability simply to protect the public and to ensure we get our communication in the ground in a timely manner. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cottrell. Next, we have testimony providing comments from Nahilani Webster from the Hawaii Association for Justice. And please refer to those comments in your testimony, members. That's all the testimony we have on this measure. Members, are there any questions for DLNR? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 246, relating to coastal protection. For this measure, we have testimony from Justine Nihipali, Office of Planning, providing support. Justine Nihipali, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Just to clarify, the Office of Planning provides comments and will stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony providing comments from Ian Hirokawa, DLNR. Mr. Hirokawa, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division. We'll stand on our written testimony offering comments on the measure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony, opposing testimony from Laurel Breyer, Kauai Climate Action Coalition, and opposing testimony from Sherry Pollock. That's all the testimony we have, members. Any questions for our testifiers? Nope. Okay, thank you. Moving on. House Bill 1122, relating to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. We have testimony from Robin Puanani Danner in support. Ms. Danner, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
All right, just very quickly, I am Robin Puanani Danner. I'm the elected chairwoman of the SHAW, the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Associations. We're a 34-year-old organization representing the interests of nearly 10,000 lessees, 1,000 of which are farmers and ranchers, and 28,000 Native Hawaiians that are on the state's wait list. We are a registered organization with the Department of Interior as a federally defined homestead association, a definition that President Obama put on the books in 2016. We stand in support of 1122. Essentially, this measure is a clarification measure and would do good policymaking and do well for Native Hawaiians. It addresses 4 major issues. It helps and gives clarification to the state and its agency, DHHL, the terminology that the state legislature introduced over 10 years ago called beneficiary consultation. It encourages community benefits agreements, a very successful tool to help communities when our lands are issued to non-beneficiaries. It enables general lease instruments to be utilized by nonprofits and mercantile lessees of Native Hawaiians, not just commercial leases, which will bring capital to the state, bring capital to these lessees in farming and ranching, et cetera. And finally, it provides clarification for the state and its agency on when under Section 204, when our trust lands are available to the general public. Thank you, Chair and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Ms. Danner. Appreciate your good work. Next, we have testimony from DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Mr. Isla, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair Bronco and members of the committee. We'll stand on our testimony with comments. However, I just do want to point out that many of the proposals in this bill would remove flexibility that the commission already has to do many of the things that are pointed out here. And as a commissioner, I personally would oppose some of the changes here because of that reduction in flexibility and the ability to advocate on behalf of not just lessees who have existing leases, but those on the wait list. And many times the decisions that commissioners make about the application of resources is really about choosing between applicants and existing lessees. So I will just stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Isla. That's all the testimony we have on this measure. Members, do you have any questions for either of our testifiers? Representative Kobayashi.
To HHL, you used the word unnecessary at least 4 times. Are these unnecessary proposed amendments harmful? Is that what I take you to be saying, because they restrict your flexibility?
That is correct. They restrict the flexibility of commission members. Many of the suggestions in here remove the ability of the department and the commission to generate revenue. And many of our conversations in this legislative session is about revenue. So tying ourselves to not being able to or severely restrict the use of lands that have already been determined by the commission to be available for commercial industrial leases, and just restricting those leases to beneficiary or beneficiary organizations removes the flexibility that I believe is necessary for the trust into perpetuity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kobayashi. Other questions for our testifiers? No, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next, House Bill 588, relating to environmental conservation, specifically the Lipoa Point Special Management Area. And we have testimony sorry, Representative?
Did you skip one?
No, we did HB 1122 and we did HB 1124.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So now we're on HB 588. Okay, 588, testimony providing comments from Justine Nihipali. Ms. Nihipali, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. We stand on our testimony. Just wanted to clarify that our recommended comments are about this terminology for special management area, not the intent of establishing the special fund for the protections of Lipoa Point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Testimony providing comments from DLNR, Mr. Ian Hirokawa. Mr. Hirokawa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Ian Hirokawa with DLNR Land Division. Department will stand on its testimony, appreciating the intent of the measure and offering comments. Be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Testimony providing comments from Craig Hirai, Department of Budget and Finance. Testimony in opposition from the Ocean Tourism Coalition from Denver Kuhn. Mr. Kuhn. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and members of the Committee on Water and Land. Denver Kuhn speaking on behalf of the Ocean Tourism Coalition and the operators, the tour boat operators that frequent Honolulu Bay. We are strongly opposed to HB 588 because it will not achieve its stated goal. The bill speaks about preserving the entire area of Lupoa Point, which we agree with, but then the bill itself focuses just on the few tour vessels that operate there and doesn't address maybe the greatest activity that has the greatest impact at that area, which is the land-based activities. So people frequent the area to go snorkeling, they cross land, they use the porta potties, and often when we're doing reef cleanups and things like that, that's where we focus most of our efforts on is cleaning up the land-based areas. So we find it just a little, I guess, disingenuous that they're going to be able to preserve this whole area, but just only focus on the visitors on the tour boats and not the land-based users. So we'd also support certainly raising revenue. We believe that DLNR, we need more revenue coming into that department to help preserve the ocean resources. There's several bills that OTC wants to support, which would raise revenue. That's SB 1179, SB 546, SB 718, SB 666. Those are ones where they would get revenue, but it wouldn't be at the expense of just the few to support the many. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kuhn. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Jim Kuhn. Mr. Jim Kuhn, if you're available, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and members of the committee. I am just building on Denver Kuhn's testimony. I think that possibly the very best way to access Honolulu Bay is through the guided snorkel tour mechanism where there's nobody walking on coral. There's only 3 moorings in the bay and they're limited access already. And to make that group, the 10 boats that access that and a couple dive boats, solely responsible for funding that whole program just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And frankly, I mean, I know it's a really easy target because it's already in the system, but if one were to try to police the shore side and have some mechanism to do that, frankly, the tour boats wouldn't even generate enough money to support that. We've done just a quick, anyway, it probably produced, well, in today's environment, very little, but in good times, it might produce as much as in a year's time, up towards $100,000 possibly, that could be generated from those vessels. But I think that a more broad approach in funding where there's a lot more players would make a lot more sense. And that's where I'd like to see the effort go.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. That's all the testimony we have on this measure, members. Any questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next, House Bill 858, relating to electric hydrofoil surfboards. We have testimony providing comments from DLNR, Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. Mr. Underwood, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas, committee members. The department will stand on its written testimony offering comments.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in opposition from Nick Leeson. Testimony in support from Renee Umberger. Please proceed, Ms. Umberger.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, video is going. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Tarnas and committee members. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify in strong support today of HB 858. As a former scuba instructor on Maui with over 10,000 hours underwater, my main concern with e-foils is their extreme underwater noise pollution. They emit a continuous high-pitched sound that is heard by swimmers, snorkelers, and divers for hundreds of feet and over a much greater distance by marine life. Research shows that underwater noise pollution causes immense stress for many marine animals, from small reef fishes to whales. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to share a 10-second underwater audio clip of an e-foil off Wailea. Yes?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry, just wanted to check. This is an e-foil off Wailea. The scuba bubbles you'll hear are loud because they're very close to the camera, but the e-foil is equally loud, though it was an estimated 200 to 300 feet away. Okay, I think that hopefully you were able to hear that and hear that sound that's been described by many snorkelers and divers and swimmers as it sounds like a dentist drill underwater. And it is certainly a cause of concern given that it's basically nonstop. We understand that the batteries on these e-foils can last for 90 minutes. And if they're in a small area, it's just
You could summarize, please. Could you summarize, please?
Yes, that's it. Just thank you, and we hope you'll pass this measure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Umberger. Appreciate that. And thank you very much for that audio, sharing the audio. That was very helpful. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Nick Poke from Aloha E-Foils. Testimony in support from Mike Moran, Kihei Community Association. Mr. Moran, it's not with us today, so please check out the testimony in support, members. We have testimony in support from Matthew Gurovich, testimony in support from Cecilia Rose Riley, testimony in support from Diane Shepard, testimony in support from Carrie Ballard, testimony in opposition from James Dvorak. Mr. Dvorak, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, my friends. Thank you for this opportunity. I am extremely opposed to this. I represent a member of the e-foil community. I recently learned about this a few days ago. We've been rallying our community in opposition. I reached out to Tina Wildberger on this. She admitted that she did not reach out to our community in any way. I asked her why. I've reached out for meetings. She refuses to meet with me. Here's the thing. You guys are going to hear things on both sides. I really want to condense it for you. E-foils have been around for years operating in Maui with 0 incidents. There are only 2 arguments that people are going to make on this topic, which is a noise level or proximity to whales or people, both of which can be addressed with current laws of distance requirements of over 200 yards away from any person or whale. Each board is, by law, you have to have licensing on your board and you have to have identification numbers. So if anybody violates those, you can just report them. In fact, other people have been reported. There have been people who've broken the law and have gone to court over it. So my point is this: instead of a knee-jerk reaction of banning the sport, reach out to the community and enforce the current laws. And in regards to that video, I've also watched that video. The video does not show an e-foiler. There's no verification of distance. I use it with my kids to dive with my head a foot away from the e-foil, and it does not make that noise. So I'm calling out that video as inconsistent. We are also working with the Department of Land and Natural Resources and NOAA to take sound readings so we can get a scientific thing. But my overarching thing, those are the only 2 arguments, is sound and distance, both of which can be addressed. The last thing I want to mention, and this is so important to me, that as it is your guys' fiduciary duty to understand this craft before you ban it, before you make laws on it. I would highly encourage all of you to take a day at the ocean with us, try it, hear it for yourself. I think it's important. Some people that I called, representatives, didn't even know what an e-foil was. I would say that's the overarching thing, is see it for yourself, experience it, so you know the lives you're affecting and you can make an informed decision.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the invitation. Next, we have testimony and support from a number of individuals: Corja Wan, Michelle Triplett, Jim Smith, Kesa Liu, Kate Thompson, James Andrew Beerer, Dr. Mary Trotto, Jenna Serlag, Mary Catherine Shepard, Suzanne O'Shaughnessy, Victoria Martocci, Kimberly Howard. And we have testimony in opposition from Alika Ferreira, Vadim Ustimenko, Travis Gulnak, Raymar Beilart, Jessica, Chris Valley, David Fimon, Bill Hardy, John Bear, Michael Carvalho, Sandy Bear, Corey Barth, Vern Wood. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Benjamin Ferris. Mr. Ferris, if you're available, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. As a eFoil user for multiple years, I oppose this bill. First of all, the referencing the loud noise that it makes is inaccurate, and I also would like to point out that video and the sound from it is portraying it much louder than it is. I've spent a lot of time underwater, with the eFoil in really close proximity, letting friends use it. Also, I free dive a lot, and regular outboard motors and jet skis and all other types of gas-powered watercraft are much louder underwater. So I would really encourage everybody that is involved with this bill to really learn and to experience what it sounds like, what it is, and to be fully educated on this before any decisions are made. One other point that I would like to make is that it seems to be the motivation for this bill is to protect marine wildlife, and this craft and this toy that people enjoy out on the water is amazingly friendly and absolutely zero emissions, and in the future can really replace so much carbon being placed into our ocean. So I really would encourage everyone to think about the ramifications for enforcing these in a way. I think proximity regulations to swimmers and ocean life is super important, and that can be enforced with the identification on the eFoils, as the previous person mentioned. So yeah, I would just like to encourage everyone to really learn what you think about this new technology and how good it is, and an opportunity for people to get out and use our oceans and enjoy them in a way that's really good for the marine wildlife, and to fully consider that before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Mr. Matthew Elsasser. Mr. Elsasser, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Elsasser, and I oppose this bill. I've grown up on the island of Maui, and I now actually work for the eFoil manufacturer Lift Foils. My love for the marine environment is part of what led me to work for Lift. We strive our hardest to make the greenest mode of transportation and recreation on the water. I believe the DNLR's website describes the eFoil best. It's a smooth, cool ride. It's eco-friendly, it's swift and silent, it's a vessel, and it needs to be registered with the DNLR to be operated legally in Hawaii state waters. While I greatly appreciate Representative Tina Wildberger's concern about protecting the marine life on Maui, I believe she has been misinformed about eFoils and their impact on the marine life. On her Facebook post, she refers to eFoils as loud. Has Tina witnessed an eFoil operate in person before writing this proposed law? On Facebook, she claims the RPM of an eFoil is 7,000 RPMs. However, we have scientific data showing eFoils operate at 4,000 RPMs, the same as a boat propeller. It appears that this is a rushed decision to shut down eFoils without any input from the users involved or factual evidence regarding the noise emitted. The Maui eFoil community has already been working in conjunction with the WAL activists to monitor the sound emission from eFoils. I recommend we wait for these scientific findings to conclude before we jump to shutting down a completely environmentally friendly activity. In summary, an eFoil produces no wake, does not have a combustion engine, does not leave any pollution in the water, and is nearly silent. It does not meet the criteria of a thrill craft, as evident by the DNLR's classification of the e-foil as a vessel on September 4th, 2020. I'm more than happy to assist in providing an e-foil for any sound testing. In the end, I believe we will find e-foils produce far less noise and greenhouse gas pollution than a Pacific Whale Foundation boat. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Elsasser. Next, final testimony from Nicholas Nettleship in opposition. Mr. Nettleship, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. Please proceed.
I submitted a written testimony, so I won't make this too long, but there's a few points I would like to make. One of them is that this bill unfairly targets e-foils as with excessive rules and a permit fee of $200, which seems far above any fees of that nature. A lot of the complaints I've heard seem to originate from South Maui, where there's a operation conducting lessons off the shore. Apparently they're waiting for a permit, but they don't have a permit. I believe that that's not a legal activity. So that could be taken care of with existing laws. Also, many of the things in the bill have, excuse me, I'm just trying to find where I guess, maybe things in the bill are redundant to existing laws. You know, as the previous testifier said, you need to be registered, you need to follow the existing boating laws, you need to be numbered. I've never heard, I've been underwater, never heard the kind of sound or noise that's been described. And mostly I think if in the future, laws and rules and regulations need to be made so we can all share the ocean in harmony without anybody getting hurt. And but before those bills are made, they should be researched. There should be information. I think there's a very large gap in truthful or accurate information or studies. And a lot of people don't even realize that the people without a motor on their foil have no motor because they're going almost as fast as the e-foils. And there is some vibrational sound emitted from the wing itself without a motor.
Please summarize, sir. We're wrapping up.
Yes. So anyways, I think a lot more research and understanding needs to be had before a bill is just thrown out there like this, kind of randomly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nettleship. I appreciate it. That's all the testimony we have on this measure. Questions? Any testifiers? Members? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For DLNR, how many e-foils or what percentage of e-foils are registered?
Representative, I don't have that number offhand, but we did a thorough review of these type of craft and we deemed them to be vessels. So anybody operating it would need to register it as a vessel and then follow the rules of the road as they're written in our rules. I can get you that number.
I mean, no, I don't need an exact number, but it seems as though many e-foils, if not a majority of e-foils, are not registered. Would that be correct?
Well, if they're required to be, so if they're not, that would be an issue. That would be an enforcement issue for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And if you can get that information to me, I can share it with the committee. Other questions?
We don't have.
Representative Ganadin.
Yeah, to DLNR, how much does an e-foil normally go for? How much does this thing cost?
I do not know what they go for.
The testimony and other testimony said about $12,000.
$12,000?
That's in the other testimony. That was what was stated.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, members, I should listen to Representative Kobayashi because he was right. I skipped over 1124. Silly me. I should never question Mr. Kobayashi. Thank you to staff confirming that Representative Kobayashi is correct. So I'm going, with your indulgence, going to return to House Bill 1124 relating to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. My apologies to the testifiers that I skipped over that. Robin Puanani Danner with the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Association providing testimony and support. Ms. Danner, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair. Thank you for bringing 1124 forward. This is a really exciting measure. Similar to House Bill 1122, this measure does not limit flexibility in any way of DHHL. In fact, it gives it even greater flexibility. It's exciting because 1124 brings parity to eliminate barriers or unintended barriers to access to capital on homesteads that could result in literally hundreds of millions of dollars to flow into every single county where Hawaiian homelands exist, which is all of them. Essentially, this measure provides clarification and opportunities on asset valuations of leasehold properties, parity to make sure that our lenders are aware that second position equity loans can be made on the vertical assets that are owned by farmers, ranchers, and homeowners, and updates the, this is a measure by the legislature to help its state agency to update its loan servicing best practices. I'm really excited to inform the committee that these same measures were discussed with the Biden transition team in December, and indeed on the very first day of President Biden coming into office, he executed a HUD executive order that will address some of these, but it would be truly inspiring for our own legislature to adopt this measure to show, again, not limiting, but showing a very progressive legislature and state that we are, to make sure that our citizens that are Native Hawaiians have the same parity, the same on par access to capital and to home retainage through loan loss mitigation. So thank you very much. We ask for your support and passage of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Danner. Next, we have Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Mr. Isla, please proceed.
Hello, Chair Carnes, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. We'll stand on our comments on this bill. I just want to highlight two things. One is we already have a loan manual that is in effect, and I believe it gives us a greater amount of flexibility in dealing with loss mitigation policies. And then the second thing is, I don't fault beneficiaries for wanting to have parity with fee simple folks. The only challenge for me is that it comes at a risk to the trust. So the trust has to put money on the side for all of the loans that we make, as well as any loans that come back from any federally backed loans that we are guaranteeing or we have insurance on. So allowing the additional borrowing of assets, or the additional borrowing of funds on the assets is good for the beneficiary, but it puts the trust at greater risk should there be national meltdown that we experienced, two presidents ago. So that's our concern, and it's listed in the comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, that's all the testimony we have on this measure. Are there any questions for our testifiers? Okay, seeing none, we will go back to where we were on the agenda, and that would be House Bill 1276 relating to state parks. We have testimony and support from Kurt Cottrell with DLNR. Mr. Cottrell, go ahead.
Good morning again, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator, State Parks. We stand in very strong support of this measure. Just a quick overview of context. The rulemaking process for fees can take 7 to 8 months, and one of the things we've learned during the pandemic is, we're trying to reboot how we manage Hawaii as a destination, particularly our park units, and we're moving more toward looking at reservation system and limits. And this measure would provide us the ability to apply what is known as dynamic pricing, which is what the hotel industry and the airline industry does, where we can evaluate and assess either seasonal or temporal fluctuations in park units. And rather than a one-size-fits-all pricing via the administrative rule process, this gives us the ability to be more creative and make some effort at establishing new pricing and then adjust it if it's too high or too low. And our testimony specifically calls out, we would look at a range of a low and a high. And the board meetings are very public, and through social media, we could get the word out very quickly in terms of what the proposed fees would be as time moves on. So anyway, that's in a nutshell what this measure does. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cottrell. Any questions for our testifier? If not, let's go on to the last measure, House Bill 1257, relating to the Invasive Species Council. Testimony in opposition from David Smith, DLNR. Mr. Smith, please proceed.
Okay, excuse me. Yeah, David Smith, Administrator for the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. Good morning, and thank you. We submitted written testimony, and we'll stand on that unless there's questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then next we have testimony providing comments from the Department of Agriculture. Mr. Atta, please proceed.
Chair Tarnas, committee members, the department will stand on its written testimony expressing concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testimony we have, members. Any questions for our testifiers? If not, then we will adjourn our meeting and reconvene for decision making. Okay, let's see if we can move through this so that you can get up and stretch before session. Okay, our first measure, House Bill 1014. My recommendation is to pass a House Draft 1, incorporate the changes as recommended by the Cattlemen's Council of Hawaii, and include the third-party committee independent review as they suggest, and it'll include instead of naming the organizations that they identify, it'll describe the organizations. It's in their testimony. I also want to include the Hawaii Association of Watershed Partnerships with that group. So that, and then we would defect the effective date and make technical non-substantive amendments. So you can take a look at the Cattlemen's Council testimony for the recommendations that we'll make. My goal here is to get the DLNR and Department of Agriculture to work together and figure out a solution to this, so the legislature doesn't have to do it. Okay, that's my recommendation. Any discussion, members? Nope. Vice Chair, please proceed with the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1014 with amendments. Vice Chair, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Gandon? Aye. Representative Kobayashi? Aye. Representative Kong? Aye. Representative Morikawa?
Aye.
Representative Ono is excused. Representative McDermott is excused. The measure passes.
Thank you. Next, we have House Bill 469. My recommendation is, again, to try to get DLNR and Department of Ag and the cattlemen to work together. I'd like to adopt the DLNR's amendments to this and include that same third-party committee at independent review, where for those lands that the DOA and the DLNR do not agree, where DOA wants it to be transferred and DLNR does not, that it would go to this third-party committee for independent review and using criteria to determine whether or not it should be transferred. I had a concern with this bill that it would just move a whole bunch of land over to the Department of Agriculture by default that they don't want, nor do they have the capacity to manage. We would defect the effective date, make some technical non-substantive amendments. We'd also change on page 4 that change the fiscal year to 2026 to 2027. page 4, line 20. So those are my recommended amendments to 469. I'm happy to respond to any questions or any discussion. Members? Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
What about that deadline date of December 31, 2023? I think that's, well, I think that might be too early or blank date.
I think at this point, I'd like to keep that language, but I recognize that we are asking a lot in a short period of time, but they've been at this for 17 years, right? So I would like to keep some pressure on them to figure out a solution.
Okay.
And again, I'm trying to be balanced about it between DLNR and DOA, but we do need to address this issue so that the ranchers can have some certainty and plan their businesses. Other questions, discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please proceed with the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 469 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Noting the reservation of Representative Gandhi. Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to House Bill 1144. Recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1, adopting the PUC amendments, basically to allow the PUC to implement these preferential rates either through adoption of rules or by commission order. So I would like to include those amendments. We'll defect the effective date, make some technical non-substantive amendments, and that's my recommendation. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1144 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. On to House Bill 320 relating to historic preservation. Recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1, defect the effective date, make some technical non-substantive amendments, and add a savings clause, which is basically saying that this is only for prospective. It doesn't affect previous decisions that were made. So this is only going forward. And that, according to our legal scholars, is called a savings clause. So that's my recommendation. Discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 320 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. I would like to move on now to HB 821 relating to historic preservation. Recommendation is pass out a House Draft 1, include the amendments suggested by Ms. Wong in her testimony, and defect the effective date. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 821 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to House Bill 1348. My recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1. I would like, because there's some, it's not clear from HCDA how they're going to work with the Stadium Authority. I would like to specify that the Stadium Authority is required to establish a memorandum of agreement with HCDA that describes how the two entities will operate to implement this measure. And the two of you need to figure this out through an MOA. I would like to include the amendment as suggested by the League of Women Voters. I'd like to make sure that we include the word construction and the list of responsibilities, as Rep. Kobayashi pointed out, and defect the effective date. Those are my recommendations. Discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1348 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Moving on to House Bill 823 relating to public land liability. I recommend we pass this out as a House Draft 1, defect the effective date, and we have to correct the reference to the HRS on page 1, change the reference to chapter 171-8.6 HRS. Our HMSO attorney pointed that out, so I will like to make that change along with the defective effective date. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 823 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to House Bill 246. Very good discussion. It's clear that DLNR is going to move forward with some rules to address this issue of temporary structures. I'm very glad to hear that. And while OP did support it, DLNR requested not to move this forward so they can do their rulemaking. I would like to defer this measure. Let's see what those rules are. And then if we need to come back, we can address this next session. But thank you very much, everyone, for your discussion about this. Okay, moving on. House Bill 1122. I would like to move this on with the effective date and make some technical non-substantive amendments. And the reason why I want to move this on is that there is some very valid, I believe, some very valid points that the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Association is making and recommendations that they make. And I would like DHHL to work with the SHA in order to figure out how we can actually benefit from these suggestions. And I want them to take the time to do that. This moves on to the next committee, Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. I would urge the two agencies, the agency and the organization to work together to discuss this. I want to keep this on the table, keep it moving forward for discussion purposes. So my recommendation is just to defect the effective date, make some technical non-substantive amendments, and move it on to the next committee for further discussion. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1122 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Noting the reservations of Representative Ganda.
Also.
And Representative Kobayashi. Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to House Bill 1124. I'm going to make the same recommendation here. I have high regard for the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Associations, very smart people, and their recommendations are well researched. I would like DHHL to really sit down and work with them to figure out what we can do to move forward some of these ideas for the benefit of our Hawaiian homelands and their beneficiaries. So my recommendation is to defect the effective date, make some technical non-substantive amendments, and move it on to the next committee as a House Draft 1. Discussion, members. Seeing none, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1124 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Noting the vote from Representative Kobayashi. With reservations.
Vote with reservations from Representative Kobayashi.
Any no votes? Noting the no vote from Representative Ganda. The measure passes.
Thank you very much, members. Next, moving on to House Bill 588. While I recognize the importance of this area, this measure needs more work. And I don't think this will achieve their desired outcomes, so my recommendation is to defer this measure. Next, House Bill 858. I think my recommendation is to defer this measure because this sounds like it's really a question of enforcement. If there are some of these vessels that are doing things that they shouldn't be or in places where they shouldn't be, there should be some enforcement that makes sure that they do behave properly and operate properly. There are e-foils out there that are not registered, they are in violation, and so that enforcement action should be carried out. So I would urge DOBOR to recognize that this is an issue, especially in the West and South Maui area, that the representative brought this to the legislature, highlights that. So I would urge DOBOR to work with the representative and work with the industry to make sure that they address these issues so that we can have safe operations of these craft. And if any of you want to learn more about it, you got the invitations. So please check it out. But we're going to defer that measure. Okay, moving on to House Bill 1276 related to state parks. I recommend we pass this out as a House Draft 1. I want to adopt the state parks recommendations and change. And we noted that on page 4, line 6, where it says public hearing, it really should be meeting. So a slight change in that. Defect the effective date and pass it out as an HD1. Discussion, members. If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1276 with amendments noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. On to the last bill of the agenda, House Bill 1257. We have two agencies that, well, put it this way, this bill we're going to defer. It's not ready for action. I will work with the introducer to figure out another approach to this. So that's my recommendation, is to defer that measure. Are there any other measures that I forgot? Nope. Okay, looks like we covered everything. Members, I really thank you for your forbearance today. I know it was a very full agenda. Thank you very much. We're out in time to go to session. I will now adjourn the meeting.